Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very exciting guest for you today. Tron Black, the founder of Ravencoin and also
not founder. Not founder.
Sorry.
Just a dev on it. So
correct me. Principal developer of Ravencoin and also one of the developers that works with Medici Ventures. Sorry, and actually I screwed that up because I went on to Crunchbase this morning, and on Crunchbase it says founder of Ravencoin. That was the last little bit of information I soaked up.
No, it's fine. I just don't want to claim that title of founder. So there's lots of people involved with this.
No, it's perfect. It makes sense to add that clarity as well. So everyone knows that the Arcane Bear family, we've been huge fans of Ravencoin for a long time. There's a reason for it, and I'm going to let Tron basically explain that to us as we go in. But Tron, give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up working in the blockchain space.
Sure. My background is in computer science. I have a computer science degree. I have an MBA. I was an entrepreneur most of my life since I was 18. Occasionally worked for big companies when I sold my company to a big company and had to work for them for a while. And found crypto in 2013, early-ish 2013, kind of in relationship to the it was the Cyprus thing where they shut the doors of the banks, and so people are like, well, what's the solution to this? It looks like our money isn't our money. And so then they said, well, what about Bitcoin? And so I started reading about Bitcoin and then just went down the rabbit hole, and that's pretty much all I've done since. So it was super fascinating on all levels, and still so much to learn.
Yeah, the Cyprus moment was, I think, a big eye-opener for a lot of people, and I hope will continue to be, that these governments have control over the monetary supply packages of the Federal Reserve. This is a very, very long conversation. I don't want to dive into too much. But how did you end up working with Bruce Fenton at Ravencoin and the Medici Ventures crew as well?
Yeah, so I was actually working for I was working on crypto stuff. I was a consultant for a company and went out to Amsterdam to a Bitcoin meetup, and Patrick Byrne was the keynote speaker at that. And so I listened to him talk, and kind of about the Medici family and the banking and kind of the origins of Amsterdam and things like that. But then during the Q&A, so it was after his talk, somebody kind of stopped and said, you know what? I want to create a parallel crypto equity. And I thought, that's going to be big. It's basically because Overstock is a public company, already registered, S1 registration, et cetera. Now you have this ability to create an equity or a token, crypto token that represents a share of that. And so I said, I want to be a part of that. So it took me a little while to kind of get on board. But then I became, was part of T0. It was back when it was just a couple of people, and then worked on that. So that was launched, I think, in December of 2016, I think we actually launched OSTKP, which was a token that represented a share of Overstock. And so from there, it's now T0 is a subsidiary of Medici Ventures, and so I work for Medici Ventures and I help a lot of our portfolio companies. But that's kind of how I came to be in Medici Ventures, was kind of through this Amsterdam keynote, getting on board with T0, and then part of Medici now. So.
Gotta love those asynchronistic moments. Now, we have also been keeping a close eye on the Florin coin developments and T0 alongside Ravencoin. Can you tell us a little bit about how some of these might be able to interact together moving forward?
I can. So I have to be super careful related to T0 stuff. So I'm going to have to kind of punt on that. I will point people right now to, there was an earnings call release this morning at 6:30 or 8:30 Eastern. I kind of point people to that. I just don't want to. I don't want to get ahead of anybody. I don't want to announce anything. I just need to be super careful in that space. So I apologize to your audience that may be waiting for those things, but
no, it's perfectly understandable. It makes sense to give that buffer time. We've been following along as closely as we can in the bear community. We think that there's some big developments there. Now, some of the things that Ravencoin offers that's really interesting that you guys have on your future roadmap are things like dividends, these restricted asset tokens, and messaging. Can you tell us how some of this why this is important and how it relates to the current stock market that we see running today?
Absolutely, that I can talk about. Dividends is really a technical capability, although I think it has legal terms. So I'm going to call it rewards for that purpose. just kind of, it has a legal connotation, but we'll call it rewards. But it's basically the ability, if you own a token, let's say, and so everybody knows, right? If you're not familiar with Ravencoin, Ravencoin lets you create your own tokens. You can just go on, cost you 500 Raven, create a token with whatever name you want, as long as somebody hasn't used it. And you say how many you want, and then all of a sudden you're the proud owner of these tokens. Now, in general, they'll have no value because you haven't given them a value, right? You could say, hey, this is worth an hour of my time. You could say this is worth a cup of lemonade if you come to my house, like a gift card, whatever you want it to be, it will be. Or it's just something you can give away, right? It's just these tokens. This has existed kind of, most people are familiar with ERC20 tokens that have kind of been used for some security stuff like Bitcoin Capital, BCAP, things like that. So the platform, the Ravencoin platform, has those same capabilities, the capability to make a token. It also has the ability, if you have these tokens, you have the ability to send to all holders of your token, you could send them Raven. And so that's a technical capability that Ravencoin has, is the ability to send Raven, which does have a monetary value, the ability to send those token holders that value via Raven. That's a technical capability. Now, the legal part I try to stay away from, because this is a technical platform that has certain capabilities, and you need to be careful if you're saying that this represents a share of a company and it things like that, and that I'm going to pay dividends. That's fine in some other countries, isn't so fine, unless you have registration or things like that. So I just don't want anybody getting in any trouble. But the platform itself has the capability to do that now. Create your token, send Raven to those tokens. We're going to make it nearly automatic to the point where we're adding a kind of a one-click button that says, I want to send these Raven to the holders of this token. One button that basically says, all right, pro rata, meaning per share or whatever, per whatever ratio they hold of these tokens, send out this value, these Raven, in that ratio. So that's a technical capability that Ravencoin has. If you script it, has it now, but that will be built in. So we'll just call it rewards. So that exists. Now, from the perspective of creating tokens and calling those a share and things like that, let's say, ignoring the legal for a minute, let's say in a jurisdiction where this is fine, you could create a company and say these are shares, and not sell them to U.S. people, and then those represent a share of the company, and there can be an agreement, and these agreements can be digitally signed and put into IPFS, which is connected with Ravencoin, and then you could send out Raven to those as shares. So all those capabilities exist now. What we've found recently is that there's some other rules to work for things like either subscriptions or for potentially for securities in the U.S. There's some other things that are needed. One of those things, unfortunately, is the ability for the issuer to basically just put a hold on something. So if a company comes and says, or not a company, a legal entity says, hey, you need to freeze these shares. We found out this is a terrorist, blah, 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 something like that. They just need to freeze the tokens in place. We're adding those capabilities, but not to the regular Ravencoin assets. We're adding to a different asset, which is called restricted assets, right? So a couple of things about the restricted assets. One, the issuer, whoever created them, has a token that they're the issuer. They're the ones that gave them out or created them. They'll have the ability to freeze them in place, right? That's a very non-cypherpunk, non-crypto kind of thing, but it is required kind of to allow them to operate in some of these other areas. The other thing you can do is you can say, these tokens can only move to tagged addresses. Well, what does that mean? It means you can create a subset of addresses. So let's say not the universe of addresses where someone just creates an address, whole clock. You can't necessarily send these restricted tokens to them until they're tagged with a tag. And the tag is just a token that somebody creates and says, oh, I have a tag that says, I'll use a less controversial one. So I have a subscription tag, right? So if you pay me $10 a month, then I'll give you the subscription tag, right? Now your address is tagged, and somebody else can send you game tokens to any addresses that have the subscription tag, right? So that's an example of, so now you have a subset of addresses of all the universe of quadrillions of addresses that are subscribers, and you can send game tokens among those addresses that are paying the subscription. So that's an example. The other reason for this is you say, well, there's certain jurisdictions that say, hey, you can't send these tokens around unless we have KYC information for them. So you could put a KYC tag in from a kind of somebody that's regulated, and they could store the KYC information. And that way, now you're not violating any rules by having these tokens move amongst addresses that someone has the KYC information for. So that's kind of we'll call it technical capabilities of the system. And now what's possible with that, I'm going to kind of leave that up to other entities to figure out.
Right. So this is a nice little segue, because I mean, for those of you that are interested in kind of connecting the dots of what this might allow, the things like the stock market to be listed on a regular exchange requires things like being able to send messages to your shareholders without necessarily messaging them directly, as far as I know. There's also, it's very expensive to be listed on these exchanges, although depending on which one you're listed on, obviously to be listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange versus the New York Stock Exchange costs a different amount of money, but these are massive amounts of overhead. So there's this picture that looks like it's being drawn where you guys are looking on how to implement potentially moving over into the security and stock world. Now, like you said, we'll leave that into the gray area, but it's fascinating to hear. Can you tell us a little bit more about why the messaging might be valuable too? Because I haven't really been able to ponder too much into there.
Absolutely. So that was in our original roadmap, and I can tell you exactly where that came from. So I was at a conference, and there was two people speaking, and I can't say who because of cat and mouse rules and kind of the rules of this conference that I was at. But there was somebody who said, "Hey, we've got this token, and it's on ERC20, and we're moving because ERC20 was kind of too expensive for them for what they were doing. So they said, we're going to move this. We want to move to another technology, a cheaper technology. But all these people who have tokens on the ERC20 platform, they wanted to move to a different platform. The problem is they can't communicate with them. There's no way to kind of message those people. It's just a token, right? So there's nothing they could do other than just kind of put out messages, put out tweets, put out a blog post, things like that. But for people who basically stored them on their Trezor or put them in the safe, they're just not paying attention. And really, there's no way to kind of even contact them. So that was one person. Somebody else in the same conversation said, yeah, this isn't a new problem. He said, I have a NASDAQ listed company, and when I want to message them, let's say to do a shareholder vote, I have to pay a quasi monopoly type company to go get the shareholders and to get a list of the shareholders. I have to pay this company, and they give me a list of shareholders. And when I get this list, I don't get their phone number, I don't get a fax, I don't get an email. I get a name and an address. That's it, mailing address. So we have to kill a bunch of trees, print out a bunch of paper, and basically mail all of these people something, and that costs another, $20,000, $30,000. So $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to get the list, and then 10, 20, 30, depends on how many shareholders you have. It was a smaller NASDAQ. You have to send everybody a thing, and you send them a piece of paper, and then they, check, and they mail it back. In the days where you should be able to, web, whatever, the electronic communication, that shouldn't happen. And so I said, well, what if the token itself had this messaging capability? So you don't want it to be a spam channel, right? You don't want it so that the holder can send you a token, then send you a bunch of spam. You don't want that. But the issue of the token that you've kind of genuinely either purchased or gotten or whatever received, you want the messages about that token, meaning we want to hold a vote, or we want to switch tokens, or we want whatever. And so this ability to basically send a message through the chain that basically gets honored by the clients just being the software, right? The Qt client runs something, or the phone clients and things like that, just to pop up a message and say, hey, we want to hold a vote. Here's how you vote. Go to this web page, click. That type of thing just eliminates the need for sending a whole bunch of paper around to thousands of people.
Yeah, that's the answer I wanted to hear, because I knew the messaging system itself was also very slow and outdated in the general markets. And like you're saying, in today's day and age, removing these middlemen, which is also part of Medici's mission, vision, values area, it's extremely important. And you guys did it with a single swoop there. So you're also about to dive into the voting. Can you tell us a little bit how the voting would work in terms of the restricted assets and the Ravencoin token itself?
Sure. So the voting probably wouldn't change between the two. Basically, all a vote is a token that you have that you can sign with your keys. So you're the holder of, let's say you're a holder of the Uber token or something. I'm just making this up, right? Uber's not actually using the system. So you're the token holder of Uber, and it basically says, do we want to change management or something like that? And so what you can do is send a whole bunch of tokens pro rata, meaning at the same ratio that all the shareholders hold this Uber token. You can send them another token that's a vote token, right? So they have 100, you send them 100. Now they have 100 votes, and they can basically, you just tell them, send your tokens to this address to vote for keeping management, vote, send them to this for changing management, that kind of thing. And so really it's not much different than the technology that already exists for Bitcoin or for tokens. It's just all it really is issuing these tokens and then sending them. The only change, and it's an important one, is after a vote is done, meaning the vote is closed, there's no reason to keep the UTXO, which is the unspent outputs. It's the record of what still is able to be spent, right? So in Bitcoin, there's this whole database of unspent Bitcoin, right? But it holds a lot of memory. And after a vote is closed, all you really care about is the results, and you can get rid of that. So there's not much difference between sending a token and having a vote token, but the vote token kind of has an expiration date. Like, we're done with it. We don't care if someone sends it after this date. They kind of, your vote kind of expires after the vote's closed. So really, it's just a technical difference. But other than that, it's really just a token.
Yeah, and so a lot of this stuff is extremely important leading into the question I'll have after this one. But someone in the chat has asked us a little bit about privacy. Now, I know you guys use something called the X16R, which is designed to remove the basic ASIC problems that we've seen in Bitcoin. Can you tell us a little bit about the privacy and the hashing algorithm that you guys currently use?
Sure. So I wouldn't call Ravencoin particularly private. I mean, it has the same privacy capabilities as Bitcoin, which isn't as good as, say, Monero or Zcash or something like that. So as long as your address is not associated with you anywhere, right? Your address is just kind of a made-up random number. As long as that's not connected to you, fairly private. In the sense that somebody sees an address sent something to another address, but they don't know who those people are. There is kind of an issue in securities, and I call it the Bill Gates problem, but that is, you see one address that owns, most of Microsoft or a large percentage of Microsoft, you kind of go, oh, okay, that's Bill Gates. If he uses that same address to then go buy, shares of, Microsoft competitor or something like that, you're kind of like, you start to make weird associations of maybe he's losing faith or something, those types of things. So you don't want that. But addresses are also, and you have an infinite number of them. So you do have that problem of, that's probably Bill Gates. There's so much in that it's likely Bill Gates. But Bill Gates can also create another address to hold something else. And that association, those two won't be linked together unless he links them together with some sort of sending it in the same transaction or something like that. The X16R doesn't necessarily help privacy. It does help with kind of ASIC resistance, and it also helped so that if we had used Bitcoin's mining algorithm, because we were a fork of Bitcoin, so if we used that algorithm, there's so many ASICs out there that small coin could easily be attacked, basically by somebody saying, we don't like that coin, let's just destroy it, and then pushing all the hash power over. So it also helped for sure in the early days where for someone to kind of marshal more horsepower, they basically got to buy more video cards and things like that. There is no way to kind of buy a whole bunch of horsepower. And since it's a different algorithm, we did have this nice steady growth of mining, which is actually pretty strong at the moment.
Yeah, we actually have at least 3 to 5 people that mine Ravencoin in the Arcane Bear community. They've been big fans of it. And so just, and to reiterate too, for everyone there that's new to Ravencoin, it is originally a blockchain Bitcoin fork. They have 21 billion tokens instead of 21 million. So it's basically a 10x. Is that right? 1000x.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, that's not correct.
That's 1000x. That's the 1000x eventually, right? So those are being mined into existence. There isn't 21 billion now. There's 3.4 or something like that.
Oh, okay, great. So you guys have basically just started from the initial Genesis block and then have gone out from there over the last year and a half.
Nobody got anything at the beginning. There was no developer set aside. There was no pre-mine. It was kind of like, okay, ready, go. And then it was kind of broadcasted out to kind of everybody, and even the people internal that kind of knew about set up seed nodes and things like that weren't allowed to mine like right then. They had to kind of get it through the same channels that everybody else were able to get it through. So.
Yeah, it's extremely important. I think the UTXO blockchains have a lot more what I'll call intrinsic value, even though I always argue there's no such thing. It has a lot more, the proof of work system itself seems to have quite a bit more inherent value. One of the things that I'm really excited about is, Africa in general, actually. I think Africa is going to be probably one of the new powerhouses over the next 2 decades. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the work you guys are aiming to do in Africa and how you hope to expand in those regions?
Sure. I can't talk too much about it because I don't know that much about it, but that is a division within Medici Land Governance, and they are working to, put better records for land on a blockchain such that people can, once you have land, so this is kind of Hernando de Soto and Patrick worked together for a while. And if The Mystery of Capital, if you want to read that book, it basically explains how basically land documents and things like that actually helps prevent terrorism and things like that. Because if you have good land documents, these terrorists would come in and basically become the protectors of people's land, and people like, hey, I like this, right? And so it kind of moved terrorists over onto the people were kind of backing the terrorists, not on purpose, but because they were backing their land. And then, but by having good land governance records so that they can borrow against it and then improve it, right? So they have more incentive to improve it because the records say it's theirs. They have more incentive to borrow against it, to improve it, and borrow against it to start companies. So it basically unlocks capital, and that's the basis of the book, and then also the basis of the Medici Land Governance Project. So we have a project specifically in Zambia and Rwanda, and it's basically documenting the land and providing better records so that can unlock the capital.
Yeah, that's a hugely important one. I think a lot of people don't realize that even still today, one of the first tactics of wartime was to aim at the land ownership and registry, because essentially if you can destroy land ownership and registry, you've put that area of the world into dismay for quite a while to try to figure out whose original capital rights are invested there. So I think the blockchain is a great adaptation for that, and focusing on Africa is a brilliant play. Can you fill us into the roadmap for maybe, let's say, the next year into where Ravencoin hopes to be going, and any new features we might be on the lookout for?
Sure. So the main thing that we're working on right now is tags and restricted assets. So this is the ability to create this subset of addresses that have been tagged. That these restricted asset, when you create a restricted assets, very much like the existing assets, it's just a token name and a quantity, but you get to say, hey, this token will honor these tags, right? You need an accredited tag as an example, right? So as long as they're accredited, they can move amongst those. We don't specify what those tags are used for. They like I said, they could be used for game subscriptions, whatever. The technology is completely unaware of what it's being used for, but it is a tool set that that works. That you can that people can come up with second layer solutions and things like that. There was a good discussion early on to say, can we build second layer solutions that solve all of these problems? And the main problem we couldn't solve with second layer solutions, meaning just build on top of Ravencoin, build another layer. The problem we couldn't solve is, hey, I'm holding my own keys for something that is not allowed to be owned by Bob, or maybe Bob is in a sanctioned country. And so the technology was was completely unaware of that. And so you could send these tokens potentially violating a bunch of rules. And so we couldn't build that particular thing. So we built the base, the minimum set that we thought would be capable of, like, now you can build using tags, using restricted assets, you can build a second layer and then just tag the addresses that are part of this and how things will move, and even have rules for your restricted assets saying, oh yeah, it can move to something that has a KYC tag and an accredited tag, but not a DEA enforcement tag or something. You have a logic that you can put in this. It's not a full scope thing like an ERC20, or even doesn't have a full has a full logic set of tags. So this and this, or this, not this. So, and parentheses, so you can build logic within it. But it's not as flexible as Solidity and things like that. So most of the projects right now are experiments that are being built on top of Solidity. We think this is a better solution kind of long term. We'll see. That kind of remains to be seen. So those are what we're working on, actively working on. The technology to do rewards, which is just can be done now, but we just want to make it easier and sort of built in the click reward everybody. So those are, and then messaging. Messaging is already on testnet. So if you want to play with it, you can send a token with a message. If you send a token, the way it works is if you're the owner of an asset, you are the issuer, you're the creator, you get a special token. Well, if you send a message to yourself, meaning basically I'm just sending this token to myself, but with a message, then what will happen, and this isn't done yet because it's more on the GUI side, on the graphical interface and on the mobile wallets. But what will happen is those wallets will say, oh, I see this message that's being sent to, from the token owner to the token owner. Well, that doesn't make sense. He doesn't really want to message himself, right? He knows what the message is. Why would you send a message to yourself? So it's really a signal that this message should be broadcast to all holders of that token. So if you're the owner of, let's say, the Uber admin token, right? You send a message to yourself, it basically gets broadcast. And by broadcast, it just means the clients will pop up and say, hey, there's a message for you. It looks like you're a holder of one of these tokens. There's a message for you from the issuer of that token. And here's the message. And so that's really, and that's on testnet now. It's just not in the GUI clients yet.
Right, and certainly as you had mentioned before, that these types of small little integrations could end up saving tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars later on down the road for implementation, especially in countries that are developing these types of new structures. That's brilliant. I know we actually had someone buy the Arcane Bear tags for us on the Ravencoin assets. Nice. Yes, we made sure. I had one or two friends that I'm pretty sure they were very quick to buy up cannabis and other random one-word strings. Now, it's been a wonderful interview. Is there anything you want to leave us off into with the Ravencoin? I mean, obviously, we're all speculative traders here. We've rode Ravencoin twice now for 100% plus gains. You've pretty much got us for life now. Is there anything you want to leave the community off with?
So the main thing I want to leave kind of as a general impression and let everybody know. I mean, this project is not. It's not one of Medici's portfolio companies. It's being supported by Medici. It's very, very community driven. We have a ton of people. There's some stuff that came out recently. If you haven't looked at it, and I'm not trying to shill this, I don't have to get anything for it. It's just kind of an awesome thing. The Spend app just added Ravencoin. Zelcore wallet just came out, and it's a wallet that's just a beautiful wallet, and it allows you to transfer assets. You can't create assets with it yet, but you can transfer assets to it and from it and between people and between, we've got a iOS wallet, Android wallet, Linux, Mac, Windows, the Zelcore wallet, and now we also have there's Mango Farm Assets. If you look at that one, it'll allow you to store Raven, on the web. So very easy, kind of works on mobile, works on, just a regular browser, but it also supports Trezor. So if you have Trezor support, everything is signed by the Trezor, so it's very secure in that way. But it's and these are all community projects. All of these other things that are just happening are just happening. Some of them I get to know about in advance, and some of them I don't. I was surprised by the Spend one, pleasantly surprised by the Spend one very recently. Anyway, it's an awesome project. I'm super grateful to be involved in it. But yeah, check it out.
Yeah, no, we're really excited for you as well. I think the what you just highlighted there, basically the decentralization of power and information has been a long time coming. So to see to have that community development, we have a flavor of it here at the Arcane Bear, where people help us write content and new things are happening. But it's brilliant to be able to include everyone by having this kind of decentralized company, like you said, allowing people to integrate with spend. And you guys had nothing to do with this. It's more of a community-driven effort.
It was community-driven. Yeah. I wasn't even aware. Yeah, I saw a rumor of it, and then it just showed up. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's got to feel very rewarding, seeing your baby take off. Tron, I've had a pleasure chatting with you. I hope we can get you back on the show again in the future to go over some more roadmaps. You definitely have the Arcane Bear family's interest, and we won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Remember, Bear family, throw us those thumbs up if you like this content. Leave your questions and comments down below. Be sure to follow Tron Black at Twitter on just @TronBlack, pretty sure.
Yep.
You got that one right.
And also at Ravencoin is another one. Is another good one. Yeah.
Nice. And who's at Ravencoin run by? Another community member?
So yeah, I think Bruce Fenton has that one.
Nice. So remember to give Ravencoin as much love as you guys can. We think you have a brilliant future ahead. So we look forward to that. And then as well with whatever you guys end up doing with Medici Ventures and that weird little love triangle that's going on, I'm excited to see.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure, Tron. We'll keep you on the show for one more minute afterwards, just so we can say goodbye. Bear family, thank you so much for the wild and supportive efforts. You guys make a huge difference in our day. And we'll see you guys on the other side.